And hello everyone, and welcome back to CSCI 210. We will take a little break to get some programming basics before we turn you loose on programming. Okay, outline is what is programming, what language will we use, and how should we program. Okay, what is, in this case, computer programming, and my definition is you're preparing a list of commands for a computer. Now, some of the examples of computer languages that you would do computer programming are BASIC, Fortran, COBOL, DBase, SQL, Java, PowerShell, Alice, and MBlock. These are all the ones that I've used from time to time. BASIC originally stood for Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code, and it was the first language everybody learned. We then would move on to something like Fortran and COBOL. Then we had a second generation of languages like DBase and SQL, and kind of a third generation Java. PowerShell followed thereafter. And Alice and MBlock are what we would call block types, and when we talk about programming interface. Now, looking at types, as far as programming interface, all the languages above except Alice and MBlock, the way you programmed them is you opened up a text editor and you typed commands into it. Now, Alice and MBlock, you have these blocks, and you will see those shortly. I have a Alice program open, and you can see where you have these code blocks that do various things. A loop is something you'll learn about later, and then do in order, just one right after another, which is the way programs normally work. MBlock will work the same way, as you will see shortly. Okay, you also have the types of computer programming languages when it comes to the programming model. The procedural languages like MBlock, basically you hand the computer a recipe and tell it to go follow it. Now, other option you have is object-oriented like Alice, Java, and PowerShell, where you kind of build models in cyberspace. Then you have set-based, which SQL, which is give me all the records that have this. Okay, you also have the notion of a tech stack, because what happens anymore is development is done with several languages at once. Web programming is probably the best example. I saw web programming where they had to be proficient in C#, but they also used JavaScript, jQuery, and SQL. This was for a web-based database application. Now, MBOT, we keep on saying MBlock and Scratch. MBlock is based on the Scratch language. Okay, so if somebody asked, you're programming in MBlock and it is procedural block language. Okay, the language we'll use, you hear us say MBlock and you'll hear us say Scratch. MBlock uses Scratch. This was developed by MIT, and we're currently on version 5. We'll do a little bit of a tour of what they call the IDE, the interactive development environment, or integrated development environment. What we have here is the one that we have, and I have it open to the example that I used to make Lightning go up to Tiffany and go up to her and stop and then purr a little bit. Okay, how do you write a program? And let's talk about the simplest simplest case of a single user, single language. Okay, the basic stages are plan, prepare, execute, and assess. Now notice I have a little asterisk down there. Consider each stage and step, abbreviate or omit as necessary. Some of the things you do is you make sure that you understand what you're writing a program for, make sure you understand all of the requirements for it. And then I like to identify what I call new tricks. These are things I don't know how to do now, but I will need to know how to do in order to do the program. And that's especially true when you start a language, but it's still true as you continue your journey. Okay, when I prepare, I lay out the program, go ahead and save it. Before that, I research the new tricks and basically research whatever I think I need to research because I can't write it off the top of my head. Okay, when you execute, I had a friend of mine that was a network admin. He was fond of saying baby steps. You write a little bit of code, then you test it to make sure that it works, then you move on to the next step. Okay, after you get done, you go back and review the program and make sure that you met all the requirements, you didn't forget anything. And then you test them, and I say if necessary, reset to default program. I'm talking about it specifically with the MBOTs. when you start programming over them, you start downloading them, you lose the original program, and so among other things, the remote doesn't work anymore. Okay, some of the considerations. When you're programming, think of it like you're explaining a task to a very, very smart child that is very, very literal and doesn't speak the same language as you do. Turn right here is an IT story. Wife and I were taking my son to soccer. There was a dirt road to the right, and there was a paved road to the left. She said, "Turn right here," and then she started yelling at me as we were bumping down the dirt road. "What are you doing?" "Well, you said turn right here." I was being very literal, and in programming, the computer is very literal. I remember one time I did a very complicated mathematical analysis. It took 2 minutes of computer time, which on the mainframe was quite a bit. And I forgot to tell it to print it out, so it did the calculation, and it sat there and burned and churned, and then it said, "Okay." It's like, well, where's the answer? Well, I didn't teach it to tell it to put out the answer, so it didn't do it. Okay, one of the things you learn with programming is how to manage frustration, because you get plenty of it with programming. But there's no feeling like once you finally get that program up and running. Okay, snacks and energy drinks. You don't have to have those, but sometimes those help you get through programming. Okay, I'm going to do a sample program, and I'm going to step through this process with you. And I'm going to pretend that my boss came in and said, "Hey, well, I'm bringing the CEO in here in a few minutes, and I want you to make a program for your little robot that makes the lights turn different color and makes some noise. And here's the steps, and here's the stages, and in the next step I will work through that with Lightning." Thank you for your attention.